Hey, what's up, Sweaties? We're coming at you live. That's right, it's the 114th episode of Collider Heroes. I'm Jon Schnepp. Thanks for watching live or later, pre-taped, it doesn't matter. We're going to explore the world of heroes and villains. Let's get into the people who are going to talk with it. Over here, we got Robert Meyer Burnett.
You know what? It's great to be back. I'm sorry that I missed last week, and it's hard for me to sit next to this man here, but I think I'm going to get through. I just hope you clean Jeremy John's clock. Can I just say that?
Well, that sounds like I know who else is here. It's Hector Navarro. What's going on, Hector?
Hi.
Thanks for coming
guys.
back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's one of my favorite things to do while I'm in LA. It's
Nice, man. Well, I'm happy you're on the show. We've also got David Griffin. Thanks for being on the show.
I'm happy to be here. This is the first show I've done with Hector. We did one video. We did Luke Cage. We were doing the live commentary. I think we did episode
right.
1 together. Yeah, but that was a while back, so it's been a while.
Yeah, it was great, man.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Have you golfed any the last couple weeks?
I did a golf with my dad recently. Yeah,
How'd you shoot?
Cool.
What'd you
I
shoot?
did pretty well. 85.
For 18?
Yeah,
Nice. Well, what if it was for 9? It wouldn't
that'd
be
been
very
bad.
good.
That'd have been really bad. Yeah.
Hey, did you have some kind of handicap? I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just trying
Did
to
you
play their
drive a
stupid
cart?
sports
I
game.
don't know.
You're doing some kind of weird. What'd you do?
He's going to become a scratch golfer. You
To-
are.
trying,
Totally
I'm trying.
teed up earlier. Anyway, let's get into the real news. But before we do, check out this fan art. It's from Gallica Graphics G.
Awesome.
It's, looks like I'm Paste Pot Pete, which I didn't really dig. But no, I actually loved it. I know we've got an ongoing joke about Paste Pot Pete in the oncoming graphic novel series. I think it's issues 1 through 80 that they're going to be making. Marvel's brand new decision to bring back Paste Pot Pete, which will never happen.
It would probably outsell their current crop of comics.
Yikes.
Ouch. Low blow.
Hey, you know what? Let's talk about some real news. Let's talk about some stuff that all of us here on Heroes were conjecturing months ago. We were like, look, there's no way that Venom is going to be in the Marvel Universe without Spidey. We had people fighting us, but guess what? We were 100% right, and I'm super glad to announce that finally Sony and Marvel have worked something out because Amy Pascal dropped the bomb in front of Kevin Feige that Venom and Silver and Black, the movie featuring Silver Sable and Black Cat, they're in the same universe as Spider-Man. That's right, the Spider-Man Homecoming that is the MCU. And they are in the MCU, so it looks like there's some kind of partnership that they've worked out. Now, this is with Marvel and Sony. Now, this is something I've said weeks ago. Robert, all of us on the show, we were like, that has to happen. They haven't announced yet. It's the only thing that makes sense. What are you going to do with a Spider-Man universe that's based on Peter Parker and Spider-Man without Spider-Man? It just makes no sense. Well, guess what? I think somebody realized that, and they were like, we've got to make sure that Tom Hardy as Venom is going to be fighting Peter Parker, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, that the character of Peter Parker is the glue of the MCU universe of Spider-Man. And if Sony owns the rights to all these characters, they realize you can't have Green Goblin and Kraven the Hunter without Spider-Man or Peter Parker. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's because they watched this show, John.
Well, look, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say that they came to their senses and we're all happy about it. What are your thoughts, Robert?
Well, I mean, if that's the case, as we've always speculated, where does Venom come from? From Infinity War. Mm-hmm. They're going to do something. They're going to sprinkle a little goodness somewhere in there.
Oh, I wish.
yeah.
I wish.
I think they will. I mean, Infinity War, the idea of it, I used to think that they would never make an Avengers movie.
Sure.
But the idea that we're getting, they have the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Every time I say, you know what, Thor's never going to work.
Yep.
Guardians of the Galaxy is not going to work.
Yep.
Ant-Man, who wants to see that? They have
Doctor Strange, Risk. Yep.
victory every single time. Infinity War, to me, is probably going to be the zenith of geek films of all time. I mean, I have so much my level of expectation for the film. It was kind of like when Crisis on Infinite Earths came out in comic book form.
Right, yeah.
I couldn't wait to see it, and it exceeded my expectations. It was everything that I wanted.
Yeah, they did it every issue. I couldn't wait. Like, who's this pariah character?
I couldn't. And I
Just
mean,
scanning the background panels for every single character.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the
you
best.
read that Benedict Cumberbatch finally shows up on set. They've been using a double for him now, but now he's finally on set. His like trainer posted a picture. The doctor's in the house this week on Twitter. I'm like, I'm so excited for this film. So why wouldn't they introduce at least the symbiote somewhere? The collector has it in a bottle. It doesn't have to be on Beyonder's Battle World,
pictures
wherever.
of Tom Holland and Iron Man and Peter Quill all on set, and we're like, yo, like Spider-Man is on some mysterious, weird, floating outer space universe land.
Yeah.
I instantly thought about the Beyonder. I instantly thought about the symbiote Spider-Man outfit, and I instantly was like, that's how they're tying it together, and that's how you can connect those dots, yo. What do you think, Hector?
That's a tough. Oh my God, so much information. Well, this is, to me, it's kind of a win-win because we're now living in a post-Avengers world. a post-shared universe world. Everything fans, audiences have shown that they expect that stuff to be connected. I don't think it's difficult to do. I don't want to limit filmmaking visions, but it's as simple as, even if that thing that you guys are describing, which would be awesome, doesn't happen in Avengers Infinity War, which comes out next year, next October in 2018, we're getting this Venom movie with Tom Hardy. Say the movie comes out and it's great. Marvel Studios now has the option, probably, they could probably work something out with Sony, to retroactively make that a part of their movie universe. By then, in Guardians Volume 3, there's a symbiote reference somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't need to have an explained origin even of the Venom symbiote for this Venom movie, because it would hopefully revolve around Tom Hardy's character, which is hopefully Eddie Brock, and like it's its own thing. And if it's rated R and if it works, the MCU can then go and make those little connections, not rely on those movies. They shouldn't rely on each other. And vice versa. You're like you're saying, John, you absolutely cannot have a lot of these supporting Spider-Man characters work without Spider-Man. For them to announce that they're doing Silver Sable and Black Cat, which I love those characters, but I'm like, I don't know if they can hold their own movie. I love them as supporting characters. I would rather see like a six-pack movie or like a kind of different, Spider-Man. I would rather see a Sinister Six movie, obviously, Norman Osborn, Dark Avengers, so much stuff in the Spider-Man world before we get to Silver Sable and Black Cat. Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen,
Right.
But I think that this is a win-win, because if the Sony Spider-Man verse movies aren't great, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios can be like, they're not a part of our thing. And if they're good, they can, through little connective threads, put them together. It's just like comic books. You read a Spider-Man comic, and whatever Norman Osborn's doing is not tied into the grander Marvel Universe in every single page. But if writers like playing with that character, when you get to big events like Siege, you can all of a sudden put Norman Osborn front and center. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it should be. It's just like comics. There's been terrible runs of every comic book character that we love.
Yep.
And what do these companies and writers and artists do? Ignore them and continue to tell stories. And that's just part of the give and take of putting out a monthly story about a character that's been around since like the 60s or earlier. So it's a win-win. I think it's also a no-brainer. I think that what Sony can do right now is just focus on making the best possible movies with the best possible script. If there's an opportunity to add some connective thread to the MCU, absolutely do it. Don't ignore it. Don't purposefully think, and don't be arrogant enough to think our characters can work without the other world. Because in my opinion, and I love all of the Marvel characters, Spider-Man is incomplete without the larger Marvel universe. The universe is incomplete without him. I feel the same about the X-Men. I love X-Men, and I love a lot of X-Men movies. I feel like the X-Men are incomplete without the Marvel universe, and vice versa. I don't think one is better than the other or doesn't need the other. So for Sony to make some of these movies and go, we can do Venom and we don't need Spider-Man, you're wrong. You need Spider-Man.
Well,
for them to acknowledge it, great. But just make a good movie.
I think the Dark Universe, or lack thereof. I mean, they're talking about that movie, The Mummy, taking a $95 million write-down off that film.
Yeah.
That it's not going to make. And as I said, as I tweeted, it was one of people like this tweet. I said, you can't put your universe before your characters. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you said is a perfect example. Man, if they were really cool, they would put the symbiote or a symbiote fighting in the arena in Ragnarok.
Sure.
And they wouldn't tell us it was the symbiote.
Yeah.
The symbiote could be on any creature.
It's just that's called
Some
an Easter
black,
egg. That's
you
for
know,
us.
just
This is an
something in
Easter
there.
egg.
I'm just saying, you
That's
can still
it.
make it happen.
You're right. I mean, it could happen as even an end credit sequence for Thor Ragnarok that ties in. I mean, all these things are possible. I like what you were saying, though, because it is true. Like, the way Marvel has operated all of their movies, it's been like, whether you're watching Thor Ragnarok or even Avengers or Captain America Civil War was, for all intents and purposes, like a big Avengers movie.
Sure.
But it focused on Captain America. It truly was Captain America's story with Iron Man as like the co-lead. But like, it was Captain America's story, but Black Panther's introduction, and he cut through that entire storyline. I think that Ant-Man is also going to have all of those characterizations of Ant-Man and the Wasp and all those characters, but we're also going to be inside the MCU universe.
sure.
Spider-Man Homecoming obviously has Iron Man and Tony Stark and the Avengers. They're part of that universe. I don't see the other Sony movies having that much of a big play with all the other Marvel Universe characters, but they are definitely going to touch on Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and that part of the universe. David, what are your thoughts?
I feel like Tom Hardy had to know that something like this was in the works before he even signed the deal. Because he was cast as Venom, I was a little confused because we had all those rumors, Hugh Jackman said, who do you want to replace? He was like, Tom Hardy.
Sure.
It's like his one answer he gave. Tom Hardy would be a great replacement for his Wolverine. And also, Tom Hardy has his own production company with his dad, Chips Hardy. They just made a show called Taboo,
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome. That's got
Cool.
renewed for a second season. That's going to come out on FX.
he's a
And
producer.
He's a producer, so
Yeah.
he has that mindset. He's now a creator. He can dictate what he wants to do. He's going to be in Dunkirk next month in July. You know, Christopher
How
Nolan's
excited
new
are we for
film.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he's got all these projects. So when he looked at that script, it had to be more than just a script. It had to be this idea that, hey, I like this Marvel universe. These last couple Sony films haven't been great, but if you put me in this universe with all these characters, of course I'll sign on because it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
It promotes him and his brand, so then he can get more of this, more of his own projects made, like he does with his dad right now. I mean, he had to know.
And
I
they
can't imagine he
probably-
went into this
yeah.
be like, hey, you're going to be in the Sony universe, and that's just
that's
going to be
it.
you. He
Yeah.
had to know something was in the
And they
works.
probably pitch it to him like, okay, you might like those Marvel movies, but they're all PG-13 right now.
Mm.
There's no plans. And here we have the opportunity because we're kind of outside of that deal to do rated R.
Now,
Yeah.
is that Kevin Feige just a week ago,
He did.
before Amy Pascal dropped this bomb, suggested, hey, we're not saying we're not going to make
For sure.
an R-rated Marvel
some
film.
point.
That at some point
And this
we
is
can't.
a great way to,
This is
again,
it.
bring one into the fold. If Venom comes out and it's awesome and people like it
Yeah.
and it actually holds up the integrity of the brand of Spider-Man and Marvel and all that other stuff, Kevin Feige could very well be like, yeah, that's a part of our universe. At some point, we'll have Tom Hardy Venom fighting the Avengers or something.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
they could do that.
You know, I wasn't here last week, so I didn't get to talk about the Black Panther trailer.
Right.
But look at how that trailer opens.
Ooh.
You know, it opens with two minor characters we met in previous Marvel movies in Civil War.
Right.
Connective thread.
And connective thread. And that's how they chose to open that trailer, you
Right.
know. And the whole idea that Wakanda is El Dorado. and
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so great.
It's like one of the dopest trailers of the
Yeah.
year. It's
yeah,
badass.
And it's a great exercise in like revealing an element of your world that was otherwise not revealed yet. Because if people would cry foul and go, well, how come Wakanda wasn't in any part of any other they can be like, no, it was literally hidden.
Well, it was it was in Avengers.
Sure,
Age of
yeah.
Ultron. Remember, they had that one little scene with Claw where
And
the
that wasn't in
ship was
Wakanda
docked.
technically.
Right,
That
it
was like off the
outside,
coast
right
of
on the
Africa.
coast.
And they also
So-
mentioned Wakanda about
Sure.
the
Yes.
vibranium,
Yeah.
and like
all the
the
way back in
shield and the
Iron
ring
Man
are
2,
colliding.
it's just
Yeah.
Easter egg in
People-
the background.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
They just don't know what Wakanda has. It's there, but nobody knows really what it is.
No, but then you
love
get
that.
those little flavors of that Kirby craziness.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, come on, man. That's
yeah,
gonna be
and
bad.
look, I was very excited by the trailer. I thought the trailer itself was a little. It was a teaser trailer, and it did for me exactly what.
I thought it was more than. I thought it was like kind of like a full trailer. It was almost 2 minutes. You know?
Well, I just love the fact that we're getting something totally different
Loved
than
it.
we have had.
Step into the
before.
spotlight.
But
That's-
again, look, the universe building
Yeah.
is exemplary across the board, and I think that they're not sacrificing the individual films themselves to add them to the bigger universe. They
Yeah.
feel all of a piece, and that's what these other shared universe. I mean,
Yeah.
look, the news coming out about Godzilla. King of the Monsters, Mike Doherty's Godzilla. I'm like, all right, man. Rodan,
Mothra,
and
and
King
King
Ghidra.
Ghidra.
Come on. I'm like, that's how to do it.
you got
And
the 3 heads with electricity going all crazy.
and they tease
Yeah.
that stuff in Kong Skull
But
Island.
I think,
It's
I
interesting.
think Marvel may have learned a lesson with Iron Man 2, which I think is their best worst example of like, and universe building and a bunch of characters. And it kind of was to the detriment of whatever story they were trying
Right,
to tell in that
right.
movie. And it was a little rushed and it was this and that. So I think that Marvel hopefully learned that lesson in that film and knew that like these movies can't just be to serve, it can't be a commercial for the next movie. And that's been a pretty valid criticism for a lot of their
let me
stuff,
add
so.
this about Iron Man too, though. People are always taking big dumps.
I like
on it,
Iron Man
but I'm
too.
just saying, try watching some of the '80s Marvel movies like The Punisher or the 1990
Yeah.
Captain
Oh, Dolph
America.
Lundgren, yeah,
yeah, you
that one,
can't
yeah.
compare. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
any of the Marvel films, whether it's like, that wasn't as good, it's still a really fun film
Yeah.
where it moves the story forward, it moves the universe
There's
forward.
great stuff in that movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, Justin
The
Hammer makes that movie
relationship
for me. Come
between
on.
him and
Sam Rockwell?
Rhodey.
All of
Rhodey's
that
great?
stuff. Let's bring up another
Mickey
universe
Rourke?
that's
Okay.
slowly building and slowly growing. It's Simon Kinberg has been announced as the director of X-Men Dark Phoenix. That's right. We've been following this for several months. Ever since they announced it was like a supernova. And I've been expecting we'd get an intergalactic X-Men movie for a long time. I was like, look, if they ever revisit Dark Phoenix, the Shi'ar are going to be in it. I've had people fight me on that too. But guess what? Like, we're on Heroes, man. We're like comic book sweaties. We know what's up. And guess what? The Shi'ar have been announced. We are going galactic with Dark Phoenix, which does nothing but please me because next year we are getting a comedy with Deadpool 2
Yeah.
with X-Men. Next year, we are getting a horror movie with X-Men, with New Mutants. And next year, we are getting a science fiction film with X-Men, and it's
Space
Dark Phoenix.
opera.
It's a space opera. It's stuff that we read when we were youngsters, and that all you guys have read recently, probably when you read the Dark Phoenix saga, Chris Claremont, John Byrne, the original story. You have the Shi'ar Empire. You have Lilandra coming in and becoming the lover of Xavier. You have the entire cast coming back. You have Fassbender. You have McAvoy. You have Jennifer Lawrence. You have Jessica
cast.
Chastain possibly playing Lilandra. You've got the possibility of the casting list that bounced out yesterday with Sunfire, Dazzler. You possibly have Sauron. I mean, the sky is the limit right now. And we've got the original X-Men, the new X-Men coming back from Apocalypse, which I thought personally was my favorite part of X-Men Apocalypse, was the reintroduction of the young Jean Grey and Scott Summers and Nightcrawler. And I can't wait to see the extended storyline. I myself am incredibly happy with this news. Let's start with you, David. What are your thoughts about Simon Kinberg directing X-Men?
I actually think it's a good decision. I know this is his directorial debut.
Sure.
But the thing is, you got to realize he's been behind the scenes for so long now. Like, he's been around these guys like Matthew Vaughn, and he's seen these guys make some great films, and he knows the system. He's written notes himself to give to the writers and directors. He's also, I'm sure, received notes in his time, so he knows how the business works. And there's a big discussion going on: is should they've gotten somebody else? Should have gotten somebody with a little more experience. I'm like, I think for the X-Men universe, Kinberg has been around that for so many years
Right.
now. He might be the perfect guy to helm the series. Maybe it won't be the most innovative movie we've ever seen, but I think he might be the best guy
Well-
because he understands the process of how to make a big blockbuster film.
Let me
like
just add
this.
before I get to you guys, like, I hear this a lot, and I don't think that's an excuse. I think, look, I mean, I agree with you. Simon Kinberg has been writing these superhero movies for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
For
Producing, sure.
decades.
Yeah.
Producing and writing. And guess what? Writing means being creative and coming up with cool ideas. Some of the ideas that he didn't work too well, but most of them actually were pretty amazing. So you kind of have to look at the good and the bad. And you're like, look, man, he's been writing and producing, which technically is part of the entire triumvirate of directing, writing, and producing. So for him to step in to the spotlight, so to speak, and like say, look, I'm going to direct this movie that all the other ones I've been writing and producing and watching other people direct it, I feel like I can execute the words that I wrote, that I produced in a way that I could direct it. So it's like, it just makes so much sense. I have zero fear of having him direct it. In fact, I'm glad he's directing it and not someone else. What do you think,
Can I
Robert?
say real quick? I know a lot of the talk here has been about the casting with like Fassbender coming back and Jennifer Lawrence.
Sure,
Everybody's
right.
really happy. Those are really big stars. But no one's really talking about Sophie Turner. This is a Dark Phoenix movie we're talking about. So it's her story. So
No, I mentioned I'm so happy that the original
and
the
I'm
new
really
cast
curious to
is there.
see what's going to happen with Sophie Turner. I think she's grown. We've seen her growing in front of our eyes with Game of Thrones. She's gotten better every single year. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is to see how Sophie Turner handles the material.
I 100% agree. I think she's stellar.
Well, first of all, let me echo your sentiments about to talk about like Frank Darabont's first feature, other than the TV movie he made, was Shawshank Redemption. He wrote and directed that.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
He was a writer producer. Orson Welles' first feature was Citizen Kane. The idea that it's so strange to me that you see the geek, our community, come out and go, Simon Kinberg hasn't. Come on, man. Have you guys not paid attention to the last 100 years of Hollywood?
Yeah.
I mean, these are guys. Simon Kinberg, again, like Kevin Feige, has been in the trenches, but Kinberg is a storyteller. Now, so far, you know, he's been involved with some movies that he's been involved with are better than others. You know, he was involved, I believe, with X3.
He was also involved with Fantastic Four, the newest Fantastic Four.
Of course,
Yeah.
and he's also been involved in Star Wars in a peripheral capacity. I mean, he's done a lot of things, but he's seen how things are done right and how things are done wrong. And I'm like, why not? Why not? It's to me, that's better than having a first-time commercial or music video director coming out and taking on something like, you know, Pitoff making Catwoman. It's not like that. And look how that turned out.
I know.
And I like Pitoff's work.
Good pull.
You know, and
I like these one-name dudes, Tarsem,
Right.
Pitoff.
Yes.
Like, come on.
But look, the Shi'ar Empire, Lilandra, I mean, this is the X-Men to the X-Men nth degree.
Yeah.
That's what I always love that. I mean, are the Brood far away? I mean, who knows? There could be a ROM crossover with the Dire Wraiths, even though there's not going to be because the Marvel, they won't
Did
do
you say
that.
Rom? Yeah, I don't know if
that'll
that's
never
it.
happen
It'll
due
never
to
happen.
rights issues. But what
But-
you're saying, though, is 100%. This is Fox's Guardians of the Galaxy. Everyone
Yeah.
is looking to unlock their cosmic universe, and for them to have the nuts to step up and be like, look, All of our X-Men movies, we've been playing with the idea of mutants, but now they're bringing in that alien factor, which has always been there. That's been there since since X-Men #1. The first X-Men movie in the 2000s, they could have gone there. At any moment in time, there's thousands of X-Men stories that are intergalactic.
It's kind of like the James Bond franchise. People are gonna ding me for this, but you know what I want this movie to be? The Moonraker of the X-Men movies. You know, after Spy Love Me, which by the way is playing at the ArcLight on June 27th, my first Bond film in the theater. But I do think now Moonraker became ridiculous. But where do you take the X-Men? Into space. Where, by the way, they belong. The greatest X-Men storyline ever arguably took place in outer space with the Shi'ar, with all of this. This is as much a part of X-Men mythology as anything else. It's not them. It's not like them coming out of left field.
No. I'm glad that you brought up the Brood, which was like the phase 2 for my X-Men, which was like Chris Claremont and John Byrne. Then it was Chris Claremont and Paul Smith. You check that out. This is some deep sweat. Get into that X-Men, Chris Claremont, Paul Smith run with the Brood.
Even though it's an Alien ripoff, but
who cares?
Yeah, they went and saw Alien, and they're like, let's put it in the comics.
Look, I want some Alien. Hector, what do you think?
I'm really split on this one. I'm 50-50 on this. I think Simon Kinberg, you guys made some excellent points, and I feel like as for a first-time director, this is something that does make a whole ton of sense. So I'm not super worried about that. I am though worried that, and again, we're all being super optimistic, and I think that's what we have to be doing right now because we're looking forward to this movie, and we obviously want it to succeed. We never want movies to fail out of the gate. That's ridiculous.
Right.
But I think that Kinberg's got a record of hit, miss. Even X-Men Apocalypse, which I loved moments of, especially that moment at the end with Jean Grey, which I thought was like, cool, you could do a whole movie around this, and now they're doing it. It still was really uneven. So for all of his producing and writing power, there still can be, products that when they get churned up in that Hollywood machine, if we're being optimistic, that's what ends up happening. So Kinberg, I'm split on. I think he does really good work on Star Wars Rebels, which is awesome if you haven't checked it out. But as far as the movie itself, I'm also really split on this. I will always be 50% love the X-Men Fox franchise and 50% I feel like Fox doesn't handle things in the best way. They didn't have that sort of long-term plan because now we're in the 90s. Which is like cool in a lot of ways that the last movie was in the 80s and the movie before that was in the 70s. Like that stuff's cool. We got to see a Silver Age, classic comic book movie with X-Men First Class, which I thought was dope and a really great excuse to make a prequel movie, which otherwise are like, why are you making a prequel? We always know how these stories end up. But I think that the X-Men franchise from Fox is kind of its own worst enemy because as somebody who loves continuity, I'm a nerd about that kind of thing. I can never fully jump into this world and be like, yeah, it's perfect. It knows what it's, because I'm like, you've got multiple Emma Frost running around. You've got inconsistencies here, there, and there. You've wiped your entire timeline, and now you're in the 90s. And no matter how great and rad this movie's going to be, I feel like there's a little bit of a missing element of relevance because it's not in modern day. Right. Deadpool and Deadpool 2 is the modern day, whatever they're going to do with X-Force and going forward. And again, that's because that little voice in my brain is going, the X-Men are incomplete without the larger Marvel universe and vice versa. Well, I would love the Shi'ar. I would love the Brood. I would love the Imperial Guard. I would love all these characters, but also at some point, the X-Men do get mixed up with other Marvel characters. I love when that happens. I love Joss Whedon's Astonishing run where they're dealing with their own shit, and then Nick Fury shows up and he's like, hey, I got to, I love that stuff. And I know it's not super, super vital to the types of stories that X-Men characters tell, but I just kind of feel like, I'm 50-50 on this because it's like, I always remind myself, and it'll be, 20, 30 years ago in the 1990s. Like, that's cool, but, do we know how these stories kind of end? Is the end game always going to be that little post-credits sort of scene in X-Men Days of Future Past where, Jean Grey and Cyclops are alive again? I'm like, what exactly is the point of these movies?
But see, I think one of the problems with you younger nerds is that you didn't grow up with the James Bond franchise.
Sure.
And I love Bond films, but the continuity it was non-existent.
It's not important, and it wasn't important.
I mean, at the end,
I agree with you. But the problem is that you said earlier we're living in a post-Avengers world, and in my perfect little brain,
the X-Men predate the Avengers, and they predate the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
So do lots of stuff, and now we have Spider-Man.
Well, here's
that's all I'm saying. Is I agree, but in an ideal world,
of what you guys are both saying is I'm seeing what you're coming at. Where you're like, every X-Men movie is a number one. Mm-hmm. It's like the continuity is like, hey, we're doing a DC
TV universe too. Like Legion has nothing to do with.
I'm just saying it's like even though the same actors, like Michael Fassbender was in that number one, and now he's in this number one, but the continuity kind of relates. But then Logan, he's Wolverine, but then that doesn't really mesh in with the earlier version of Logan. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, the Wolverine Origins is not the same as the X-Men Days of Future Past Origins, which is certainly not the same as the Logan origin. I mean, so it's every issue is a number one of these movies, wherein is the MCU is it doesn't matter if you're watching Avengers or Black Panther or
Yeah.
Spider-Man Homecoming, you're watching a continuing storyline of something that if you watch them in continuity, you would have been like Iron Man number one is when Nick Fury came up with, yo, dude, I got some Avengers initiative. And then Spider-Man Homecoming is like, look, check it out. There's Avengers Tower with Iron Man. The initiative has happened, and there's all this stuff that's happened in between these movies that all goes and it flows together and actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of continuity that I could see how some people would get kind of, they
And
want that.
Just to defend myself a little bit, number one priority is a good story. Obviously, that stuff, everything that John and I are talking about, it doesn't matter ultimately. But what I'm saying, I think what I'm trying to quantify is that it doesn't inspire confidence in me as a viewer in their sort of vision of what these characters are. Because I feel like they're kind of taking it one by one. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't inspire vision of like, oh man, they've been waiting to do X-Men Dark
Right.
Phoenix. Like Simon's probably writing the script right now. Like it's just kind of this thing of like, I'm not super sold on, when you tell me Marvel's going to do a phase 3, the DCU is going to follow in the footsteps of Wonder Woman and they're going to figure out what these characters, like I'm jazzed about all that
But
stuff.
I still think if you look at it like a comic book run of your favorite, like even the X-Men, I've been reading the X-Men, I hate to say it, for 40 years.
Yeah.
All right, and there's been storylines that have come and gone. The X-Men characters should be dead. They should have all grown old and died.
Well, I
the
even have an
idea-
explanation for that, though. I even have one for
the
that.
idea that you have to go, okay, well,
Yeah.
in your own mind, you have to believe that when a different writer and artist team comes on, the characters, the essence of the character stays the same, but there's a different way of telling those stories. And I think if we get too bogged down, like I think X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, and now X-Men Dark Phoenix, whatever they're going to end up calling it, those 4 movies do have a continuity.
Sure.
You know, and,
Right.
and when you try and spin them off and think about where does X-Men 3 fit into all this, then it starts to get a little weird.
Yeah, it doesn't
but
work.
I think if X-Men Dark Phoenix honors those 3 films, it could be really interesting.
Though I wish
Yeah.
Apocalypse was better. Hey, guess what? Let's move on to the third topic. Here comes the new gods. That's right. Warner Brothers have a massive hit with Wonder Woman, and thank God they had Gal Gadot involved in that, because I think, let me just side note, I'll get into Gal Gadot in a minute, but they're now retooling their next Justice League quite heavily. So with Joss Whedon, he's both writing and directing lots of new scenes, as well as pickups and rewrites on previous Zack Snyder directed scenes. As we hear more and more about various upcoming DC movies being added to a very enormous slate, one obvious entry that's right under our nose is not being mentioned. What ties the entire DC universe in to Justice League and opens up the cosmic world just like Guardians of the Galaxy did for Marvel? That's right, it's the New Gods. And we already know that they're going to be playing a giant role in the Justice League movie, with the mother boxes being buried at different sites. That's going to be, a lot of people, you nerds know, it starts the movie off. It's going to be a big thing. There's one in Atlantis. Cyborg's got one if you watch BVS. So will Orion be introduced in Justice League? We've already got Parademons that were in BVS. We already know Steppenwolf is going to be the main villain, and we've heard that Darkseid is going to show up in some capacity. What about Mr. Miracle and Big Barda? How about those Forever people? Let's talk about the New
Granny
Gods.
goodness.
Granny
Wow.
Goodness is making an appearance. What do you think, Robert? Is the New Gods going to be announced, and when is it going to happen?
Well, here's what I find really interesting about the DC cinematic universe. We know Ares exists.
Right.
And Ares was part of the gods of Olympus.
Yes.
So the gods of Olympus created Wonder Woman. Zeus created Wonder Woman. Well, it doesn't make sense to me that in their cinematic universe that the gods of Olympus are not the new gods. They have to be. Are you going to have a second set of gods? Like
Yes.
Highfather, is Zeus. And I think that there's no problem. People are saying, well, why would you have the Kryptonians have something to do with life on Earth or whatever? Why can't the Atlanteans, the Kryptonians, and the Amazons be somehow linked? Maybe not the Amazons, but you already know that the Kryptonians were on Earth 20,000 years ago from Man of Steel. So why not combine all of these things?
Good guess, the Amazons, because they're like, they're having sex with Zeus.
Right, well, they are, and
Well,
who's
one
to
of them
say
did.
all of this isn't? Why wouldn't New Genesis, or maybe it was Genesis back then? It wasn't New Genesis. Why wouldn't they have a presence on Earth? Why wouldn't they be? It makes total sense. And the New Gods left to find
Yes.
to found New Genesis.
Well, I think, you bring up a really good point, and that is like they've been trying to develop the New Gods for decades. And one of the biggest reasons why they haven't made it is because everyone is like, it's too much like Star Wars. Forgetting that this book came out years before George Lucas ever wrote Star Wars. In fact, he was reading it while he was in college.
Yeah.
He admits it. He's like, I love New Gods. I love Jack Kirby. Guess what? The Source is the Force. Guess what? Darkseid is Darth Vader. Guess what? Orion is Luke Skywalker. He's his dad. I mean, the parallels are incredibly similar. It's not just like, it's weird that it's totally the same. The storyline of the original New Gods is literally Star Wars in certain ways. I'm not saying it's exact. There's lots of influences in Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. All I'm saying is I want to see a New Gods movie done in the Jack Kirby zone.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be fantastic, but that's the big stopping point because people are like, well, it's too much like Star Wars.
What
I think
a weird
DC
criticism. It's too much like an incredibly popular thing. We shouldn't do that.
No,
thing.
no.
Like,
It's the
that's
fear
weird.
of like, we're going to be charged of copying something.
I see what you're saying.
Like the Matrix took everything from Neuromancer, but no one knows what Neuromancer is because it wasn't made into a movie yet. It's the same type of a thing where it's like whoever got there first gets to claim the original, thing.
Well, the Matrix had Ghost in the Shell in it too. I mean, there was so much.
Well, the Matrix
Japanese
has all
anime.
of those things.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, so if New Gods, finally DC is kind of like, and Warner Brothers for that matter, is getting over the fact that like, look, this is very Star Warsian. Let's get into it. Let's claim it. Let's claim it for what it is. Every time Darkseid in the animated series has been fighting Superman for years.
Love it.
Darkseid in the comic book world has been the main threat to the DC universe for years.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the New Gods. What about you? What are your thoughts on it, Hector?
I think that's it. A lot of what you guys are saying seems like a no-brainer. It's just a tough sell for me. It's a really tough sell. But I think if they did it right, it could be something like Game of Thrones. It could be something that has a lot of great sort of political intrigue, and you see these royal families. And it's essentially what I think Marvel at one point thought that Inhumans could be.
Yep.
And then some jealous Marvel TV people snatched it, and they're making it a TV show. So I feel like at some point, Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios are going to have to announce, like, we can't do Black Bolt as a movie, because, like, it's kind of technically we can never do it. So I think that this could be something that Warner Brothers could have over Disney, Marvel. Warner Brothers, DC can go, we've got New Gods, and they could lean into one of their strengths. I do think that another one of their strengths is something even cosmically stronger than the Guardians of the Galaxy, which has always been, to me, kind of obscure until that movie hit. And it's always been not as connected to Earth and those heroes until that movie hit, and they've kind of been bringing Star-Lord and the Guardians back to Earth, back and forth in the comic books, is the Green Lantern Corps.
Sure.
I would rather see the DC Extended Universe blow up their universe with the Green Lantern Corps and get to storylines like the Sinestro Corps War, Blackest Night, do that kind of stuff, the color spectrum, all of that stuff, just really blow it out. And I think New Gods it's a tough sell, but I feel like you'd have to make a movie called New Gods and focus on Orion Darkseid. That to me is like the strongest connection. I love Mr. Miracle. I love Big Barda. I would be stoked if Orion showed up in Justice League. I don't know how much they're going to do that because we know we're getting Steppenwolf, because they're setting up like the formation of the League itself, and we know it's going to be sort of a two-part story. I think that we're going to see Darkseid in the end game kind of shoot after that. But I mean, I think it would be awesome if they did it. I think that it's really, really tough. It's a really tough sell. Not just because it's similar to Star Wars, just because it's just like huge ideas based around characters that aren't household names quite yet. And I think Warner Brothers is kind of playing it smart by listing all of we're doing Green Lantern, we're doing Aquaman, we're doing Flash, all that kind of thing first.
It's hard because I remember when I first read Final Crisis, and I know Morrison writes at a level that's just, I was like, I've read that 3 times. I don't really know I don't understand
you're right.
it. Yeah,
I've read it 3 times too. I have
no idea what's going on.
We're all too dumb.
Well, no, because he's referencing and listing a lot of things that you have to be like,
It's
let
heavy.
me look
It's
this
dense.
up.
It's very dense.
It's also not great.
Also,
not great.
I love Darkseid. My experience with Darkseid is more from the Superman animated series or Justice League the animated series.
Yes.
Darkseid, I don't get when people fly in movies why Superman always has to do this. Darkseid just has his hands behind his back like this and just glides. Like he doesn't need to be all anime like up and away. He just moves like he acts like a god. I was just fascinated by that. Also, the Omega rays.
Omega
they go
beams.
sideways. It's like they like diagonal kind of crisscross and go. Like I'm fascinated with that. But yeah, it seems like I agree with Hector. It seems like something that's tough to sell, like to make this story. But hey, they did it with Thor. They've done it with Guardians of the Galaxy. Hey, we've seen squirrels talking and all this. I mean, we're getting Squirrel Girls coming out on TV soon.
And I think that there's room to go off of what you're saying for multiple pantheons of gods. I think that instead of making the Greek gods the new gods themselves, I feel like the Greek gods could be a thing.
Right, you can make it like the TV show American Gods. Every culture has their own version of gods.
There was probably Kryptonian gods eons ago, and we've seen little bits and pieces there in the comic books. And
well,
Superman
Man of
comics,
Steel basically planted that seed because they were like, we threw our guys out and they went to all these different worlds. the one gal who landed before Kal-El was his cousin, who is Supergirl, and that's why
Yeah.
we keep hearing about those hints, which brings us to Minor Mutations.
Nicely done.
Which we are going to get into a bunch of things that we're going to sweat about. I'm just going to read out a whole bunch of stuff, and I'd love to talk more about the Green Lantern Corps, because I think
Yeah.
that you're right.
That's the
That is
answer.
actually... They're going to do New Gods and Green Lantern Corps, because that's
Great.
all part of the fabric of the
But
cosmic
again,
world.
they need somebody who we have probably analyzed the universe in the last 10 minutes better than most of what's going on in the executive offices.
Well, the other thing I
Warner
think of is
Brothers.
thankfully with Green Lantern, thankfully Jeff Johnson's, he kind of
Yeah.
brought to life the Green Lantern again over
Yes.
the last 15 years.
And made it
Hopefully,
the premier DC
yes,
title for
hopefully that
many
we're in good
years,
hands
yeah.
with Green
I
Lantern.
believe so. I think. I mean, it was sort of a rough and tumble a little bit when Jeff came on. It's like how much are they going to leeway are they going to give him? And I think it's like good that he had to exert himself a little bit more. However, that had to go down. It happened. It's obvious because you see it in some of these newer films like Wonder Woman. Let's get into Minor Mutations. Number one, we got Ryan Reynolds gives us the very first Deadpool 2 image. It's looking like I think he's in front of Xavier's college right there. Yep, I'd love to see that. Number two, we were just talking about it. Supergirl and Brainiac rumored to be in Man of Steel 2, coming at you sometime in the next 48 years. Get on it. Number three, Black Lightning might be part of the Arrowverse,
Cool.
as well as an appearance of Static Shock being part of that world too. I'd love to see
Static.
some of those milestone characters.
Yep.
Number four, we've got Wonder Woman crossing $500 million worldwide. That is fantastic. Number five, we've got Scarlett Johansson talking about a 30-person Infinity War scene. I mean, come on. This is going to be crazy. Number six, we have got Preacher Season 2 coming at you. There's a featurette. The series, the AMC series, premieres this Sunday, June 25th. Every single person who hasn't watched Preacher, you better get on it. It is one of the greatest comic book adaptations out right now. I love that series. Number seven, we've got Danny Elfman replacing Junkie XL on the Justice League score. Are we going to hear some of that Batman flavor in this new thing? And speaking of Justice League, is the Hall of Justice on its way? Because I mean, we got Whedon, we got them shooting scenes with this building that basically looks exactly like the Hall of Justice.
Hope so.
I think that's gonna happen. And then finally, we've got Titans casting call for Dick Grayson, Raven, Beast Boy, and Starfire for the new DC All Access, whatever the heck it's called. DC, I'm part of a payment
Yeah, the
thing.
digital thing. Yeah.
Whatever it's called, I don't know, but they're making Titans, which I'm really excited about. I think that's a great idea. What do you think, Hector? What pops
Oh my
off to you?
God, I love the Teen Titans so much. I just wish that Cyborg was also listed in a casting, and I don't
Yep.
know if they're not doing. I have no idea if they're not doing that because they're doing a Cyborg movie, which I think is rad, and I love Victor Stone, but it also bums me out that Cyborg's not a part of the Titans,
Right.
And it's sort of not thought of as being a part of the Titans right now that he's on the Justice League. Some people would say that's an upgrade. I think the Titans are just as good as the Justice League, y'all. They're like DC's X-Men.
Yep.
And to me, that's like making a Storm movie before you make an X-Men movie. I love Storm. Aurora Monroe is one of the greatest comic book characters of all time, but I think everybody would agree that Storm's home and her family is the X-Men. That's how I feel about Cyborg. I want to see more Cyborg Beast Boy relationships. I love those two together. So I'm stoked about a live action Titans. I hope that it's good. I really, really, really love a lot of the DC live action TV stuff, so I'm sure that it'll be rad, but I would love to see Cyborg.
Let me add to that. Could it
Yeah.
be that they're just not announcing Cyborg because they've already cast him? He's in Justice League.
It's a possibility, and I'm also hoping that I think that like Warner Brothers is in a kind of unique, cool position that they have TV and movies separate. The pluses and minuses are that the two big companies right now, Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers, Disney. There's pluses and minuses to how they're running their game, and I think one of the pluses for Warner Brothers is that you can build up brands even quicker and faster.
Right.
You've got a Supergirl show right now that's very popular and it's on people's minds. Make a Supergirl movie. And I think that we're beyond, that's going to be confusing to audiences. Here's what would have been confusing. If you made a Spider-Man movie, live action, without Spider-Man in it, which I think that's why Sony's going around it. You have Lego Batman. That's a separate universe, obviously, because it's animated than their live action Batman stuff. You're going to have
Right.
an animated Spider-Man movie, obviously going to be in a separate universe than their live action Spider-Man stuff. But I think that because TV and movie are they're so different, they're so separate, I think audiences are savvy now. We can all Wikipedia something and look it up. People are not going to be like, why isn't that Melissa Benoist standing next to Henry Cavill? No, it's another actress playing Supergirl. They did a Batman movie. They did a Superman Returns while they were doing Smallville. It's not a big deal. If you want to have these characters have that sort of brand recognition, that household name capability, then I think that do as much of them as possible. And I would love it if Cyborg, if there was an actor playing Victor Stone in a Titan show at some point, live action, while there was the actor Ray Fisher playing Cyborg in their live action thing. I think it's fine.
It could still
Fine.
happen. Maybe they've
It could
cast
still
it. They're
happen.
holding it back.
I hope so.
What do you think, Robert?
Well, I love the Titans. They're my favorite superhero team of all time. Really.
Wow, cool.
They, the Perez Marv Wolfman
So
run. It was so good. I'm still mad when they tried to introduce Team Titans in the middle of the Titans Hunt storyline. I want to kill somebody. It was really annoying to read back then. I'm like, the wildebeests have done what? No, what? You're not gonna. Anyway. I'm really excited about Black Lightning.
Yeah.
I think the Black Lightning show, I love the approach that Black Lightning is older. You know, he was Black
So
Lightning
smart.
as a young man, but now he's Black Lightning. He has to come back, and he's got like daughters.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a show about a dad and his daughters in the guise of Black Lightning. First of all, I love the actor.
Cress Williams.
He looks
Yeah.
great in the role as Black Lightning. The costume is great. I'm very excited. And why, when they first said it's not part of the CW universe, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, of course.
It's-
Even if
yeah.
they can say that, but in viewers' minds, you can't get away from that. There's no
Yeah.
way people are going to go, oh, well, that show's not a part of the whole thing.
Embrace
Just
it.
like Supergirl moved networks
Yeah. Right.
because it had to become part of the CW universe. I mean, it's like, who are you kidding?
Yeah.
You know, again, why would somebody think that? Anyway, I'm very excited about that. I'm also very excited, again, about Infinity War. 30 characters. I'm like, come on. There's got to be like 60 or 70.
Yeah, up that.
She's like, look,
Yeah.
there's 30 characters. I'm like, yeah.
Does the
okay.
symbiote count? It's on somebody's
Yeah,
shoulder.
I mean, yeah, it's like,
You know.
come on, by
Ant-Man's
the way,
in every shot. Ant-Man's in
know.
every shot, you guys. You can't
Totally.
see him.
And the
I
Wasp.
still want the Nick Fury Black Widow team up movie. I think that can be done. It's a spy thriller.
Why not Black Widow, Hawkeye? They had a relationship in Budapest.
But they're not Hawkeye. Yeah, okay.
Why not Daredevil's Black Widow? Why is everybody dissing Daredevil?
Let's
all
do
the
it. Let's
time,
get Charlie
man?
Cox in one of them movies.
Remember.
Let's do it. Let's have a
Yeah.
new Avengers movie led by Mike Coulter's Luke Cage. Oh, I said it.
Yeah.
Come on.
There
Let's
we
make
go.
it happen, people.
What do you think, David?
I'm looking at the Junkie XL getting replaced by Danny Elfman. I mean, he had that tweet where he said, like, no one likes to be replaced. but
Sure.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what that's what happened. I was replaced. I wasn't like, I just didn't walk off on my own. And with all these reshoots we're doing, I'm just hoping that Justice League, because Wonder Woman was so good, I hope it doesn't feel like we did with Suicide Squad, where it
Sure.
felt like you're watching two different films
Edited,
just
yeah.
put it together. So I hope that it's a smooth transition. I love Joss Whedon. I trust him. I enjoy Zack Snyder too. I'm sad to what happened with his family and he has to walk away.
Right.
But I wonder now, I know Jeff Johns at the head of this, but I wonder now if this is now going to be Joss Whedon's vision now as opposed, remember it was supposed to be
Sure.
Zack Snyder's, kind of
Yeah.
Warner Brothers world. So
Yeah.
now it's just Joss Whedon's
Well,
vision now, and he works well with Danny Elfman. So
Look at it this
everything's
way.
changing now.
There's absolutely no way that this is Zack Snyder's Justice League anymore. Let's just be honest about it and be upfront
But it's so
about
soon,
it.
though. Are you worried? I mean, it almost seems like it's too soon.
No, it's not too
They're
soon.
reshooting for 2.5
No,
months.
but that's not even the case. Let's just go back a little bit. Let's go back a little bit, like to 2 weeks after Batman v Superman came out, where it was like tanked by all the critics.
Sure.
The reaction to it was like the opposite of what Warner Brothers wanted, but yet they were already locked in and had all the sets built to shoot Justice League. They're literally, y'all got to go and make this movie now. Guess what? They've reshot that movie over 3 times. So this is not a big surprise. The horror of it is unfortunately the thing that happened with Snyder's family, because that doesn't make the exit any smoother.
No.
But these are things that the wheels were in motion for many months before this ever happened.
But
That
don't you
Joss
think
Whedon
it's
was
too
being
late in the game? I mean, this
absolutely
movie comes
not
out in November.
No, it's not, because things like this happen all the time. Guess what? Rogue One. I'll use
Yeah.
that just
And
as
World
the most,
War Z, I know
the
they
most
came in,
recent example is World War Z. But I'm saying Rogue One, they reshot a ton of that movie.
Sure.
The entire last 30 minutes of the movie is completely and totally different. How did they reshoot it? Guess what? They were like, guess what? It's not working. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into the ad campaign for this. And on top of that, if this movie does not work, it fails on all these other characters. Aquaman, Flash, everybody else, the Batman, everything is riding on this movie. Not just being okay, but amazing. This movie has to be great. This is Justice League. Who did they bring in? The guy who made the Avengers.
Yeah.
So
Both
I'm
Avengers.
sorry, both Avengers. So it's sort of like, look, man. Yeah, he's rewriting some scenes. They had that in the works for a long time. This doesn't just happen like, hey, I'm making Batgirl. This doesn't just happen. So I mean, the family tragedy that Zack Snyder that happened to his family is horrible. But I think these other things were in the works already for a long time, because they had already reshot and redone stuff with Zack Snyder. Weeks and weeks and weeks of rewrites and reshoots and entire script getting thrown away and reshooting again. So the movie that we're going to see is nothing like the movie that started shooting production a year and a half ago.
Also, what people forget is a lot of these movies are green screen intensive.
Yes.
Which means if you have these sort of painterly backdrops that that Zack Snyder likes,
Yeah.
a lot of this is facilitated because it's composited on a green screen. He could come in and look at the footage that's been shot. he can say, okay, I like this, and because it's green screen footage, there's a lot of malleability there.
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to pick and choose. And look, they're going to have to throw a hell of a lot of money to get this stuff done. People are there. I'm sure there are effects facilities all over the world right now that are cranking away 24/7 on triple time. God knows how much this movie's going to wind up
wait
costing.
till August and September, yo. That's when everyone is going to be working on this. Every single
Because they keep
effects
showing the
house.
old trailer. You know, I want to see Wonder Woman again for the second time. They keep showing that Justice League trailer.
Oh, by the way,
it's also a trailer I would imagine is going to look a lot
the
different
new
too,
Justice League trailer drops at Comic-Con.
Really?
So they just announced that the
wow.
San Diego Comic-Con will have the brand new Justice League trailer, which I'm sure will actually have some of the Joss Whedon reshoots in there.
And imagine if you had all that footage. He has access to everything, that's already been shot, and you pick and you choose, and like, I can take this, write an interim bridge scene. So I think what we're going to get is going to be a fascinating film that's ultimately going to be better for it.
Here's a crazy idea.
And I can't wait to read it. I hope they release the making of, because it's going to be a fascinating story in post-production and how to fix a film.
Call me crazy. Let me say this. Justice League 2 is being shot right now, and Joss Whedon is directing it. Wouldn't that be crazy if he took all this footage, which is literally, like I said, it's 3 movies worth. They were originally shooting these movies back to back, and they abandoned that. Remember, they were shooting it, and then like 2-3 months in, they're like, we're just going to focus on, going to focus on this one thing. Why are they doing it? Maybe they're like, well, because of the situation with Batman v Superman, we got to change stuff. Wouldn't it be smart? Because how many more years are we going to have to wait for Justice League 2? 5, 10 years to get a second Justice League? The way the rate is with Man of Steel, it's 5 years now, and they haven't even announced Man of Steel 2. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous and sad, to be honest with you. That's how I feel. I feel like sad for DC and Warner Brothers that they can't get it together to, like, look, all the fans loved Wonder Woman, announce Wonder Woman 2, get Man of Steel 2, announce it. Put the stakes down for Batman. Stop playing games. I mean, it's kind of a sad state of affairs where they've announced 30 movies. I'm not even joking when I say 30 movies, because look it up. They've announced like 30 movies, and none of them have release dates except for Aquaman.
Yeah.
The one movie
Next
is
year,
Aquaman. The one movie that none of us on the planet, probably on the planet, ever thought we were like, man, I can't wait to see Aquaman. No one ever said
And
that.
we love him. We
No
love
one.
him from a trailer for Justice League.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's like the way that they reinterpreted that character and got Jason Momoa. It's like they were able to make the impossible possible. I think the possible right now is that Joss Whedon is actually shooting scenes for Justice League, finishing Justice League properly by rewriting and reshooting it, and segueing into Justice League 2.
Then, Peter Jackson pretty much pioneered that idea by turning the final Hobbit movie into 2, or turning the 2 movies into 3, because he took footage that, we shot this and we shot this. And use this.
Don't use the Hobbit. That's a horrible.
Well, no,
because the Hobbit was horrible.
It's not. Well,
that's like the bad example.
Okay, I don't want to get into that, but I will say.
I'm just saying,
that,
man. Like Lord of the Rings is the one.
Having worked on those discs, the Lord of the Rings films were very iterative from the first 3.
Right.
The first 3, and they went in and they did pickups on each one of those movies.
Yes.
60 days of pickups.
Yes.
Where there were whole scenes, whole sequences that were jettisoned from those films. They reshot them, they rejiggered them, they made them the way they wanted them. And that was, Warner Brothers' New Line. They have that example. They can go back and go, okay, we've shot all this footage.
Yeah.
It exists. Why throw it away? Why not look at it and see, okay, what have we already spent tens of millions of dollars on? Why not get 2 movies for the price of 2 movies?
Come on, let's do it.
Why build 1 when you can build 2 at twice the price? That's what SR Haddon always said.
I want to see that.
Feel like contact.
I'm gonna. All you people who are watching this live right now, start writing in some Twitter questions, because we're gonna bounce on those Twitter questions really quickly. I want to thank everyone who contributed to my Isolated Mutations of the Assembly Line Baby book. I'm making that crazy thing. You're all gonna get to read it. The full hardcover comes out in October. There's gonna be a preview thing. At San Diego Comic-Con, let me know if you're going to be there. I'm going to have a booth. All that information will come to you. But thanks for helping me get this crazy thing published. I appreciate it. Twitter questions, start writing them in. We're going to answer a bunch of the ones that you guys wrote in online. Matt Howlett asks, will Joss Whedon's Batgirl include characters from Gotham City Sirens and/or replace that film? So, Gotham City Sirens, directed by David Ayer, was announced. Got Harley Quinn is producing it. The actress. Poison Ivy's going to be in it.
Maybe Catwoman.
Maybe Batgirl. All of a sudden, Joss Whedon comes in. Hey, how's it going? I'm making Batgirl. And before that, remember, Chris McKay from Lego Movie is like, yo, check it out. I'm making Nightwing.
Nightwing.
So of all three of those movies, you're like, look, man, I want to see all three of them.
Yeah.
If they would just simply announce a date that they're coming out, that I could maybe put on my calendar and be like, I can't wait to see this. When is it going to be made? No one knows. So all this stuff is very floaty. So now we have to take these guesses. Like, what do you guys think? I'm going to go across each one. Is it going to be Gotham City Sirens or Batgirl? Robert.
I don't know the way DC goes. Who's directing Flash? I have no idea. I mean, I would.
You got to pick one.
I'll say Batgirl.
Okay. Hector?
¿Por qué no los both? Both of them.
Why not both?
Yeah. ¿Por qué no los dos?
But
I
if you
think
had
that
to go with one, pick one.
if I had to go
Which
with
one comes out first is what I'm saying.
Oh, which one comes out first? I'm going to go Gotham City Sirens. Is going to come out first, and I think that it might set up Batgirl. That she might be an element, but I feel like those characters need to be focused on. Like they're the thrust, they're the sort of
I'm
anti-heroes.
changing my vote. I'm going with Hector.
And then we'll see Batgirl develop the thing. I don't know. I don't see Batgirl being an origin movie where the daughter of J.K. Simmons is like, I'm going to be Batgirl now.
Yeah,
I feel
that's very smart. And also,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard a rumor that they are thinking of having Jared Leto in a flashback sequence to talk about Barbara Gordon and the things that she went through, and perhaps a version of the Killing Joke. So I would like to see that Gotham
Really?
City Sirens as opposed to Batgirl to establish Batgirl in that, if that is possible.
That's tricky.
I think I like to see Gotham City Sirens because I want David Ayer. I know he wants redemption. I mean, he's a great director. You get End of Watch,
Right.
Fury, and then Suicide Squad.
Sure.
And I'm sure he's a competitor. It's like he wants to do better. He wants to be better. So I'm sure in his head he's like, just give me another shot. Give me another movie. Give me something to
Right.
work on. So I hope that he gets to push that out.
I want to see that too. I mean, he wrote a very cool apology letter for people like myself. Who the second time I saw Suicide Squad, I was like, I like the first 30 minutes, but then once they go to the weird tower in the sky thing, things fall apart.
They hired a trailer company to recut that film.
I know.
As an editor myself, I can't. That movie's unwatchable.
Let's not talk about that movie. Let's go into Kylo Trend and his question. Now with Danny Elfman on board for Justice League, aren't you nervous of the outcome? I am. So many people in and out. Well, Kylo, I'm not nervous at all. Why?
Yeah.
Because look, Junkie XL is a great score guy. I thought he did a good job with Amazing Spider-Man 2 and what else? Deadpool.
Gonna help do the Wonder Woman song.
Yeah, I mean,
Mad
so
Max.
look, I mean, yeah, and he worked on BVS. So look, he did a good job. And
Yeah.
the final tally was, look, Joss Whedon's coming in. His imprint is going to be a lot stronger than anyone is saying or wanting to say. But guess what? You know what tells you everything that his imprint is stronger is when they hire a brand new dude to do the musical score 3 months out when there's been a guy working on it for a year.
Yeah.
That is trying in a subtle way to tell you, guess what's happening. Now now fill in the blanks. So don't be worried about it. Be excited about it because I think Justice League is going to be incredible.
Hope so.
Anybody else? What do you guys think?
Dude, I thought Danny Elfman did a great job on Avengers Age of Ultron soundtrack, collaborating with Brian Tyler. They each
Yes.
tackled different tracks and stuff. And this was Danny Elfman, who is a veteran and who has done superhero before and defined superhero film music.
Yes.
Came in and was able to work off of what was already established. And even Brian Tyler himself came in and was able to work off of what Alan Silvestri already established with Avengers and Captain America. They're all kind of building on each other's themes. I really like that score still, and that's a good example of Danny Elfman coming in, working with another composer on a big superhero team movie. Just listen to that score. I thought it was great.
Well, first of all, didn't Junkie XL work on Batman v Superman too?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the thing.
With Hans Zimmer, right?
With Hans
Yeah.
Zimmer,
Yeah.
and, his score, Junkie XL's score for Fury Road is incredible. I love playing the Doof Warrior
best.
music. It's the greatest thing ever. But like you said, his music is very different. I mean, Joss Whedon's sensibility is not what Junkie XL has brought to films
Might be
so
right.
far.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Joss Whedon's those painterly, the look of Joss Whedon's movies fit very well with that kind of music, but my vision is not that.
Right.
And the fact that Danny Elfman, I think that's the most telling thing about what's going on with this movie of all.
Yeah. The entire film is being re-edited. The entire film is being reshot. The entire film is being redirected for the most part. Now, I'm sure because of legal contracts, it's going to say directed by Zack Snyder. But when you come down to if 50% of it has been rewritten and reshot by this other person,
They could give him.
Hey, look,
why not a
Directed by
dual?
Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon.
Why
Sure.
not?
it doesn't work that way in the DGA. So it doesn't work that way.
well,
So I personally,
Frank Miller.
I personally feel what will happen is
Yeah, who'll get credit for direct? So when they get directed by,
it'll say Zack Snyder.
okay, who will?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Whedon is going to get an executive producer credit or some kind of thing like that, and he's my guess is he's directing Justice League 2. They're just not announcing it. So that's the smart
right.
play. I hope somebody's watching this and making that happen. Christopher Corcoran asks, do you think Zack Snyder is officially done with the DCEU at this point? Officially, yes, because his goal and game plan always was to do Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and then Justice League.
true.
And he said he originally was going to do Justice League 1 and 2. But when they made it just one movie, that's like, yo, I'm doing this and I'm introducing all these characters. And I'm, he had a heavy hand in Wonder Woman. He like helped write the story. He cast Gal
Still got a
Gadot.
producing credit on that.
And yeah, no, I mean, it's not like Zack Snyder didn't do an incredible heavy lifting job of launching the DCEU with Man of Steel. And, you got to give him the credit that he deserves. I mean, I love Man of Steel and I really love Wonder Woman. So I feel like, look, he's done a good job and I haven't seen Justice League yet. Perhaps the jury is out. We don't know what if I could have watched his original version of Justice League.
Sure.
That was made even before everybody started freaking out and reshooting this and that, and reshooting and rewriting this and that. I mean, how many versions of this movie actually are ever going to exist in the ultimate super version in 10 years when they release, here's the 4 different versions, we could watch them all
Like
green
Blade
screen.
Runner, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
what
and
do you-
also we've said the ultimate version, the ultimate edition of Batman v Superman isn't horrible.
No.
It has a really interesting feel to it. Every time I find myself watching that movie over and over again, and it casts, I've said this before, but it casts a spell. It's not, for us comic book fans, there's so many things like I can't stand the fact that Gotham and Metropolis are across the bay from one another. I'm like, what brain trust came up with that? Gotham is Chicago, Metropolis is New York. I mean,
I would have swapped it, but still, either way, it's
I
great.
mean, it's that's how in my mind I was, because all the gang, it's Chicago mobs of the 20s.
I just
That's
always
all those
picture
vi-
Metropolis geographically in a Chicago area because its proximity to Kansas. I just picture
Yeah.
like the Midwest
No,
and,
that's-
that, and that
that's
kind of,
smart.
and then I always picture Gotham as like a New Jersey, like it's on the East Coast.
buy that.
And it's a real shit
yeah,
town.
the worst part
Yeah.
of New Jersey. Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
but it doesn't matter.
I just think that I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
well, hey, let's move on to a new
yeah.
train of
Can I
thought.
say it real quick?
Yeah,
Say
yeah,
f-
of
fast. I hope Zach. I know he's an artist. I know he
Yeah.
wants to create. I hope he comes back from this, and doesn't just recede. I mean, obviously, take
Sure.
care of your family first. That's the most important thing. Somebody can take care of your family.
Yeah.
But I hope he comes back, and I want to see what he creates after this, just on his own.
Yeah.
I do
what?
too.
Like, because obviously he's going through a horrible situation, but. What is he going to do next? Like, that's what I'm curious. So I hope we get to see him direct.
I also
soon.
want him to do whatever is best for him,
Yeah.
personally and professionally.
Yes.
If what is best for him is to work on original stuff or to continue to come back and he's like, I want to keep making superhero movies in
Right.
the DC universe,
Yeah.
and Warner Brothers is like, great,
And
then
Warner
great,
Brothers-
then do it. Hire the guy and
Right.
keep. But
Warner Brothers
but
is his home.
Warner Brothers is it is and I think I'll quote his partner in this Justice League endeavor, Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon once said about doing superhero related stuff. He said you need to have to write about superheroes to write about superheroes. You have to have that inherent love and passion flowing through your
Yeah.
veins. And if Zach's got that, then by all means. Say that you want to come back and do stuff, and then come back and do stuff because like, his home is Warner Brothers. But if he really is done telling the story that he wanted to tell, and he wants to go do other stuff, do whatever you want to do.
Well, Hector, I've got the perfect answer to that. Dino Mujic asks, do you agree that Paste Pot Pete needs his own movie?
Boom.
Well, Zack Snyder, when you come back,
Don't.
I want you making that Paste Pot Pete movie because
John.
only you can make it epic.
Now the
come
question
on.
is, do you call it Paste Pot Pete or the Trapster?
No, absolutely not the Trapster. Zero. There is no Trapster. That doesn't even exist in my world. It's only Paste Pot Pete. Crazy dude with a paste. Just it's always overflowing, and he's like,
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's Paste Pot Pete.
It could be an animated film.
Should it be an animated film?
The sequel to Captain Underpants.
I know that that the fan here wasn't asking for a serious answer to this very silly
was very
question,
serious.
but I would seriously love to see the Trapster or Paste Pot Pete basically play a cameo role in a future Spider-Man movie, like we
Yeah.
might be getting with Shocker.
Yes.
in this upcoming movie, right? Shocker with his like low rent suit, where it's
Right.
just, and again, kind of the same role that Paul Giamatti's Rhino played in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's like get him out of the way in the beginning, and then he shows up at the end as this little fun cameo. I think that the Trapster would be great, and then Spider-Man says to Trapster, "All right, Paste Pot Pete, let's do," and you're like, "Oh, he called him Paste Pot Pete because he's got like a glue gun." It'd be perfect. It'd be
Hector,
great.
I'm very angry that you brought up the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Hey, it's fine.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Hey, and
love
you know what?
moments of
Hot
that
Toys
movie.
never did make that Rhino toy.
Thank
There's a reason
God.
for that.
Would've been huge.
Wessiger asks, could the Punisher series introduce new characters such as Moon Knight, similar to Luke Cage and Jessica Jones?
That'd be dope.
If Netflix, which they've been very smart about the way they've been able to introduce characters like Cage in Jessica Jones, it's like a
Punisher and
soft-
Daredevil,
yeah.
Elektra and Daredevil.
So
Yep.
Moon Knight and Punisher makes too much sense.
It
Moon
does.
Knight, what do you think?
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, everyone who watches this show knows that I love Moon Knight,
Yes.
one of my favorite Marvel characters. They've never figured out what to really do with him after the Mensch Sienkiewicz run.
Right.
I love the latest run of Moon Knight.
The Jeff Lemire run on
It's
Moon Knight
trippy.
is incredible.
It's incredible.
It's
I've really
great.
liked that because I always thought that I even wrote a Moon Knight screenplay when I was in high school. I thought the way to take it would to make him nuts, like really out of his mind.
Man, we got to
And,
do a
like,
live read of
not
that. Can we do a
know-
live read of that?
I can't find it.
What?
It was all I adapted issue 1 and issue 25, the Black Spectre issue.
Nice.
But I think it's great, and I think why not? I mean, why not have a schizophrenic superhero?
Yeah,
who
totally.
doesn't know who he really is and what
be
the hell's
awesome.
really
What do
going
you
on.
think, Hector?
There was a great Bendis run. I just love the idea that the issue 1 opened and Moon Knight was talking to Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Captain America.
Oh, it's great.
And by the end of that first issue, you find out that those became new personalities in his multiple personalities disorder, which I thought was like so funny and so like weird and cool. I don't know if they ever did a Moon Knight. Let's say he's introducing Punisher. Moon Knight gets his own Netflix series. I don't think that they could get Chris Evans, Captain America, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and not Wolverine, obviously. But I'm like, I wonder if they could do an episode of Moon Knight, the pilot episode of his series, where like Charlie Cox, Daredevil shows up, right?
Right.
Kristen Ritter, Jessica Jones shows up.
Sure.
Mike Coulter, Luke Cage, and he's talking to them as if he's like one of the Marvel Knights. And by the end of it, you're like, oh, those are his multiple personalities. And then like they could be brought in throughout the show, kind of like as sort of characters that are within his head. There's so many
Yeah.
possibilities for it. It could
Yep.
be like Legion, the FX show Legion,
Yeah.
where they explore that kind of
Moon
like
Knight is the
Yeah.
closest. Like
Yes.
I mean, but Legion was super trippy.
Yeah.
I don't want to have it that crazy.
Okay.
But I mean, if you definitely check out the new Moon Knight series that Jeff Lemire is writing
Yeah, it's
on
really
Marvel,
cool. It's beautiful.
It's great. You got anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna order it here. It's just you can get it on Comixology for $2 right now. The first volume for $2.
Oh, that's
I'm
fantastic.
gonna pick that up. Yeah,
Very
right
nice.
now. Yeah.
All right, next question is Robert Moore asks, when they ultimately move forward with Green Lantern, should it be more of an ensemble movie or a focus on one protagonist? Let me throw that to Hector because
This
we were just
question-
rocking on that.
This question like hurts my heart. I'm so bittersweet about this. I want to see as much of the Green Lantern universe blown up, but I know that I'm in a minority in this. I love Jon Stewart. He's my favorite Green Lantern. And I feel like he's been underserved. He's been underutilized. I grew up watching Justice League Unlimited, Justice League, and I think he's such an interesting character.
He's
and
great in that.
He's great in that. And I think that in that show, he was given that sort of tender love and care and like the ability to have little mini story arcs and a relationship with Hawkgirl and all this great stuff that it's like, ooh, imagine if Jon Stewart as a character could be given more of that and then more of a support and that kind of a film thing.
Right.
And I think that it's tough because everybody goes to Silver Age, the first Green Lantern, if you're not counting Alan Scott. Hal.
Right.
Everybody loves Hal Jordan.
Sure.
And I totally get the love and I hear that and I feel it, but I kind of feel like for me personally, I would be much more interested in Jon Stewart. I think that if they're doing Green Lantern Corps and we've heard words tossed around like Lethal Weapon,
Yeah.
I think that that's great. I think that you can look at Lethal Weapon and go, it's Mel Gibson's movie, he's the star, and Danny Glover is the supporting character. You can also look at it and go, Danny Glover's the main character, and Martin Riggs is the supporting, and it's
Right.
tough, and it's not a sort of like who has more counting beans thing, but I just feel like we live in a time and place now. The Justice League movie version of Justice League is already super diverse. You've got
Right.
a Samoan-looking Aquaman.
Yeah.
You've got an Israeli Wonder Woman. You've got a young Jewish kid playing Flash. They're not the sort of clean-cut, blue-eyed, blonde-haired white guys that populated Silver Age comics in
Right.
the 50s because that
And
was
a
a different era.
disabled black man playing Cyborg.
Yeah, technically, yeah. It's an
Yeah,
advanced,
he's
it's an
disabled.
advanced
Yeah,
prosthesis.
yeah, he is,
It's
that's
an
true.
advanced prosthesis.
Yeah.
But I think that there's room for more than one black guy in the Justice League.
Well,
and
I don't
I would
underst-
love to see Jon Stewart Green Lantern as the Earthbound
Yeah.
Green Lantern and have Hal. And I've just read Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern
Because they're
Corps.
cops, they have districts.
They have
galactic
districts.
districts.
Galactic
Yeah, they're
sectors,
yeah.
And I just read the new Rebirth title, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, and him and Sinestro is this great rivalry. And Hal's like out in space, and he
Right.
even's assigned new Green Lanterns, Jessica Cruz, to the sort of Earth sector. And I'm like, I think Jon Stewart can absolutely serve that role. He can be on the Justice League. He can represent. We can have more than one black guy on a team and have it not be like a big freak out thing. It's just have two black. If we're going to have Cyborg and not Martian
Right.
Manhunter, that's great. I love my Jon Jones, but I get it because diversity. But then bring in Jon Stewart and kind of build up that character while allowing Hal to be that sort of spacefaring, exploring character. And it would be awesome if we could get to Hal as Parallax. at some point as an end game, and then Jon would really come in and bring in Kyle.
That's
I
too
mean,
deep.
I want all the characters,
I
but
don't ever want to see Parallax again because they ruined it in the first Green
Poop
Lantern
monster.
movie.
What I'm saying is, I love all the characters,
Terrible.
and I love all of the love for all the characters. But personally, for me, I would just love a lot of attention given to Jon.
All right, we are running over really quick, but I want to get to these live Twitter questions, so I'm going to ask them, and you guys brief, quick answers. Here we go. Subatomic Freak. Why doesn't Marvel use the Masters of Evil? There are so many underutilized great villains. David.
I don't know. I'm really not familiar. What are the masters? I'm sorry. I know.
Zemu,
Crimson Dynamo,
sorry.
Enchantress.
Yes.
Basically, at
The
some
Wrecking
point,
Crew is like
Baron Zemo.
that's not Masters of Evil.
Like Constrictor. Like it's a bunch of C-list characters,
Yeah.
but essentially it's the anti-Avengers.
Isn't
Each
Enchantress
Avengers character.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
They're like the Frightful Four meets the
There's
Fantastic Four.
an
It's like
evil
the-
Thor, an
yeah.
evil Iron Man, an evil Cap, an evil, they each have their own versions on the Masters
That
of
question's
Evil.
too sweaty
It's
for me.
hard.
Sorry.
It's hard to create a verisimilitude in any universe.
Yeah.
So if you start using C-level villains, it's really tough to make them realistic in a real world
Especially
situation.
the Avengers when they, I don't know if they're going to do that with Infinity War, but like Joss kind of was like, hey, we're going to open up Avengers Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
Like they've been doing stuff for years and they're operating as a team. If Avengers 3 opened up with them just cleaning house with the Masters of Evil, that would be badass.
Abomination.
You've got Hulk fighting Abomination. You've got like a
They
big
bring back Daniel Brühl as Baron
sequence.
Zemo.
Come
It'd be
on.
awesome.
Done.
That would be fantastic. And then you're off into outer space
Yep.
with Thanos.
Agreed.
Daniel Skip Allen asks, what do you think the odds are of the DCU alternate universe movies like Gotham by Gaslight or Red Sun? If those ever happening, I'll say this, as an animated series, yes.
Yeah,
I
they're
don't
ways
see that
off.
happening live action.
And the same for
anytime
Marvel
soon.
too. Marvel has great alternate universes, arguably not as good as DC's Elseworlds,
Yes.
which to me are like all time. But Marvel has stuff like Old Man Logan. The closest he got was Logan. Marvel has Spider-Gwen, and I think we're years away from them doing alternate dimensions within their own thing. I think that's like an extra level of sweaty that movie general audiences aren't ready for.
We get
so
it in Flashpoint, a little bit.
Yeah.
With the Flashpoint.
Hey man,
Yeah.
I want to make a Crime Syndicate movie. That's all I'm
Yeah,
telling
that'd
you.
be dope.
Yeah.
I want to
That
see
would
that.
be-
Yeah.
Hey, here's a
Earth
question.
3.
Raymond Verada asks, who would be a great dictator for the Authority movie? Well, I got one for you. It's Deadpool's Tim Miller. That guy's incredible. I talked to him, and he's an Authority sweaty. I would give it to him.
Did you say dictator or
did.
direct? You said dictator.
But he meant director.
Who would
Director.
be a great dictator?
Did I?
No,
Did I say
director's
dictator?
okay, but I was like,
Dictator.
I was thinking, I'm like,
Donald
throughout
Trump
history,
would be an amazing
Mussolini?
dictator.
I don't know.
Who would be a great director for the Authority movie? Because the Authority is all about dictatorship.
Yeah.
I
Miller
say
would be
Tim
good.
Miller should be the dictator of Authority.
That's I love that idea.
Yeah.
I would love Matthew Vaughn. I think he can do R-rated comic stuff
Yep.
easy. I mean,
I
Kick-Ass,
agree.
Kingsman.
I
I
like
think
Matthew
Matthew
Vaughn,
Vaughn.
yeah.
Matthew Vaughn would have a good time with that Authority edginess.
But see, I want Authority now. and
Paul
I-
Verhoeven.
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven.
He's
would
getting
be-
up in
deep
age.
cut. Deep cut.
But Paul Verhoeven would kill. He would just kill an
All right.
Authority.
Pridey Pride asks, what Vertigo series deserves a premium cable show? I want Transmetropolitan, and I do as well want Transmetropolitan.
I have one, Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire.
Very cool.
Oh, yeah.
You ever read
guys-
Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I had-
crazy.
It's good. Yeah, I love
I
Sweet
love it.
Tooth.
You guys
yeah.
are both wrong. The only correct answer is Why the Last Man. Let's get it.
Come on.
Come
They're
on.
supposed to
No,
be
come
waiting.
They're
on.
supposedly developing
Hello,
Why the
it's
Last Man?
Sandman. That's it.
Yeah.
That is the end all be all. Sandman, all 75 issues and the special.
Or another
know.
version, a reboot of Constantine.
I still want to see more Constantine. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
He-
Sure.
He got shortchanged on that last one.
Swamp Thing. Let's
Here
do
we
Saga
go.
on the Swamp Thing.
Yeah,
Swamp Thing.
would be great.
Alan
Yeah.
Moore's entire run
Yeah.
of Swamp Thing.
There's a
All
lot of good books on Vertigo.
Sweaty question of the week comes from Nick Davis. And he asks, do you think a Who Framed Roger Rabbit-like movie could work with superheroes? Maybe the Amalgam Universe light.
So I didn't understand the context at first, and then I was like, oh, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it was Disney and Warner Brothers cartoons mixing it up. And I
Yeah.
think the answer is yes, and I think we're going to see it in our lifetimes. I believe we're going to see a Marvel versus DC movie, but it's going to take decades. I think that once superhero movies, if and when they kind of peter out and people are like convincing themselves that they're done with it, I think Warner Brothers and Disney, if they still own DC Comics and Marvel, which I'm sure they will make a Marvel versus DC movie, but the logistics of that are nuts. I would
Yeah.
love it to be JLA Avengers-esque in the 2003 limited series 4-issue run, which I think is the pinnacle of like intercompany crossovers. If their companies got their due. Their strengths were on display. Their
great.
weaknesses. It was all just a big love fest. Look at that comic book series and go, I wonder if studios could agree to do, I think it'd have to be a two-parter. One would be called Marvel versus DC. The second one would be called DC versus Marvel, so that there's no like, who gets top billing first?
No,
Like,
you know what? I
all
would
of those
I would
questions
not
have to
call
be
it that. I
answered.
would call it like a challenge of the superheroes or something, like make it a
Yeah.
little bit more generic. And
you
it
go.
would really literally be like the posters would be like Superman like colliding with Captain America.
Look,
It's like-
I agree with you, and the way to do it is you make it favored nations. You go, look, we don't have the money. There's not enough money on the planet Earth, and there's not enough economics that make a movie viable where you could have Justice League versus Avengers. But everybody in the world would be that much cooler if they did.
Yeah.
So they come out and they go, here's the budget. Here's what we pay everyone. Favored nations means everybody gets paid the same amount of money, unlike how much Gal Gadot made compared to how much Henry Cavill made playing their characters. She made $300,000.
Yeah.
Well, if it was favored nations and they said who wants to be, and open it up, if you've been on a CW show, if you've been on a Netflix series, they just go to all the actors and they're like, we're opening the door. Here's what you get paid.
Scale.
Basically you're gonna get scale, and if it does really well, you all have profit participation.
Challenge of the Super Friends.
But
There
see,
you
that's
go.
that's too that lean too towards too much DC.
Wait a sec. Challenge of the Super Pals. No, I don't know.
Challenge of the Amazing Friend. No,
Why don't they just call it the amalgam? But everyone would be like, I don't know what amalgam
That's
means.
the worst word ever.
I don't know what
That's the
amalgam
worst.
is. Yeah.
It'd have to be DC versus
Well, you know
Marvel,
what's an
Marvel versus
amalgam is
DC.
our show, and it's over. And I want to thank my guests for being on this extra sweaty edition. Robert, where can people find you online?
I did work a small Hot Toys reference in today, just so you all know.
Yeah, baby.
But that Rhino toy I was never going to buy. You can find me on Twitter at Burnett RM, or you can find me on Instagram at RM Burnett, or find me on Facebook at Robert Meyer Burnett.
Yes. And Hector, where can people
Find me
find
on
you?
the internet at Hector is Funny, and I promote all of the stuff I do. I'm at Hyper RPG a couple days a week, and I also do TV recap preview stuff for DC All Access on YouTube, so check it out.
Nice. David Griffin, where can people find you?
Find me on Twitter and Instagram at GriffinDE. Don't forget TV Talk this Monday. Got a lot of cool shows to talk about. We got Broadchurch coming back. We have, Glow on Netflix. Comes out on Friday. And don't forget The Preacher, as Jon Schnepp was saying earlier. Preacher on Sunday night on AMC. A lot to talk about on Monday's show.
Cool.
Yeah, and you can find me just on Twitter and Instagram at Jon Schnepp. Check out Slayer #3 came out last week. It's the last issue of the 3-issue Slayer series I wrote. It's extra gory and violent. Go buy it at your local comic shop. Go to your local comic shop and get a whole bunch of extra cool, sweaty comics. I'll see you next week. Actually, I won't see you next week. Robert's going to host it. I'm out next week, but come back anyway next week. 1:15, yo. See you then.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.